Let me begin by asking you, when you hear the word diabetes, what comes to your mind?
Well, if I were to quote my wife, I'd say, if you eat that, you're going to lose one of your toes. Do you really want to eat that? But family history, heart disease, silence. What else comes to mind with diabetes? Worse than cancer. That's what my initial diagnosing doctor said and wrote to me. Ignoring. Ignoring is probably the good thing because you don't feel bad, usually. You don't feel bad. You might feel a little tired sometimes or thirsty, but then you drink something or then you go out and oh, this little bit won't hurt me, and I have read enough and know enough that it's not if you take a spoonful of sugar that you're going to lose a foot, but just ignoring it, turning your head away from it.
You used the word silence.
Yeah, it's a silent thing. Since you don't feel bad, since you don't have at first a pain, you don't have a pain in your stomach or your legs are hurting, or you have an acute symptom, then it's silence. It's just going on, and when you understand what it's doing to your body, then at some point the switch gets flipped and you start thinking, wait, I better take this a lot more serious than I have. I'd ignored it for I guess I was first diagnosed in the late 90s, and I'm sure I just ignored it other than to take some pills and to watch my sugar, but ignored it for at least 5 to 6 to 7 years until I had just one horrible weekend in April, I think it was, of '06, and had a horrible migraine, which I'd never had before, have never had since. And so I thought, well, it's got to be my eyes. I'm having some problem. I went to the eye doctor. He said, no, but you need to go back and talk to your treating physician. I went back, and she said, yeah, you're going to need to start insulin. You need to get serious about this. You need to, do the testing. You need to do the insulin. You need to get your exercise going and your weight under control.
So what happened then? What happened when you got this?
Oh, that's when I got more serious. That's when, I'd been resistant to insulin, I think, like everybody else. But that's when I realized that I needed to do something. I sure didn't want to go back through the pain and the agony of that migraine, which was about 2.5 days in just utter misery. And so started on insulin, started testing more often, and became more compliant, lost some weight, need to lose more, but am walking now 3 miles every morning and trying to get the exercise level up.
That's excellent. So you've seen a big change in probably the way you feel.
Yeah. Although there's still days, and sometimes I'll test and it'll be 200 and be over 200 number, and I'm bad about forgetting to do things. I think I'm ADD. My wife certainly says I'm ADD, and so I'll forget. I'll leave the insulin bag and the pills at home, and we'll be out and we'll eat, or I'll just forget to take it and eat something that really spikes my glucose levels, and then when I test, it's 290, 310, 220, whatever, and I've never been able to get it all the way down to 100 to 120 like the doctor wants it. Mm-hmm. In fact, the only time I've ever felt bad was when the blood sugar went into low 80s or mid 70s, and then I just feel horrible, and I know there's a problem there, mm-hmm. On the low end instead of the high mm-hmm. end. So that goes back to why I think it's a silence. It's just there and it's doing its dirty work, but it's doing it silently.
Mm-hmm. Now, since since you had the disease, were you aware that others in your family have had the disease?
Oh yeah, I knew that my whole life. My grandmother died from complications of diabetes before Mom and Dad were married. In fact, while they were engaged, but before they married in 1949. And I'd always heard that. And then my dad had diabetes, as we used to say back then, well, just a touch of it, you know, just had a little bit of diabetes, and I remember him taking a pill called Diabinese, one of the first oral medications, and never went on insulin, but died at age 60 of heart disease, and had heart disease, and it's a long story, but actually died of something else. But it was related to surgery because his arteries were clogging, and he'd had a heart attack and had heart disease. So yeah, I knew about it. And my grandmother always told me, don't pour all that sugar on your cereal or you'll get diabetes. And, you know, I was 4 years old, and that didn't mean anything to me. It always been around. I'd always heard about it, and it was one of those things that other people got. You know, even though it's in my family, you know, we got to watch out for it. It's what other people got.
Yeah, that's such a common attitude.
Oh, well, that's what I find in talking to people and talking to people here in the county with the group. One of the midwives that helped with my wife's mother, Margaret Newman, was Wag Thacker. And Wag was a midwife and had diabetes, and had bad diabetes, and the type that she started losing through amputation, first part of one leg, then all of one leg, and part of the other, and then the other. And by the time she died, she was double amputee up to the knee. And the thing about Wag, and even that wasn't enough to rattle my cage, was it was so wonderful to visit Wag. She's sitting there in her wheelchair or on the edge of her bed, and she lived in a little house on the east end of Antsburg. But when you went to visit Wag, and this was while Courtney and I were dating and when we'd first married, it was just such a delight. She was such an outgoing, wonderful person, and would talk about Court's mom, and after Margaret died, and then Wag died a couple, 3 years later, as I recall. But even then, that wasn't enough to really get me. And I knew probably in the early 90s that something was going wrong, you know, that things weren't working like they would and like they used to. Started having problems sexually and with erectile dysfunction, and thought, well, it's my heart. Dad had a heart problem, so it must be my heart. Never occurred to me it was diabetes until mid to end of the 90s. And so our doctor at the time, Grant Stevenson, after one particularly good workup, sent me a letter that I kept on the front of the refrigerator for at least 10 years that talked about, you know, you have diabetes. You don't have a touch of sugar. You don't have a little bit of diabetes. You know, it's like you can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't be a little bit diabetic. And he spelled out in great detail, both face-to-face and in writing, you know, what it would be like. And the one thing that did get me, and it started me taking the disease more seriously, even though I wasn't taking insulin, and probably was, knew I wasn't reacting as well as I could and as being as compliant, was he said, look, I'd rather have cancer. If I could choose, I'd rather have cancer, stroke, you know, just have a heart attack. You are not going to want to die because of complications from diabetes. It's worse than, you know, we've been through cancer deaths and heart problems deaths, and so I knew what he was talking about. But still, there was the resistance because it was silent and you didn't really feel bad. I never had the extreme thirst. I never had problems with neuropathy at first and the pins and needles that they talk about. You know, so while I had it on the refrigerator and I did do better than I had through the 80s and 90s, I still, you know, didn't treat it as seriously as I am now.
How does your family give you support?
Oh, Courtney's great. Courtney's great about it. She bugs me, of course. She's the one that says, you know, how many toes do you want to lose today? You know, do you really want to order French fries? You know, and just pointing it out to me. she's, and you know Courtney, and she was always overweight, and she had surgery, bariatric surgery a few years ago, and so has become much more conscious of what she's eating, and so she's eating much better. And I tell people that's why I've lost weight, is because my wife had bariatric surgery. But very supportive. I have a daughter-in-law that is probably, she's a sixth grade teacher, just had our first grandson, but just she's a sixth grade teacher, and so you do what Hope says. I mean, she's got that personality, and she's very, very good, you know. When we're planning dinner, she'll make sure that there's green vegetables and more protein and less carbohydrates, and just very, very good at that. And our son Chad that's here, even Jay in China, who's been gone for a few years, when he comes back, you know, very aware of, you know, what is a good diet, what is good eating. I certainly don't drink like I used to. Used to be nothing to, you know, drink 2 or 3 beers or have 2 or 3 cocktails, and it's few and far between at this point because of the problems that it can cause with your diabetes.
One of the things I find interesting is that people don't always realize that this is a disease you have to take care of every day.
Yeah, yeah. It comes to you like, you know, it's like a big brick wall. You run in and you say, okay, so what's the cure, Grant? What's the cure, Patty? And it's like, well, there is no cure. You can't cure this disease. There's nothing, there's no magic pill you can take, there's no magic surgery you can have, maybe with the exception now of gastric bypass, and they're working on that. But it's something that, since you can't cure it, you have to do a little something every day. Now that's doesn't really fit in with my usual personality. I'm somebody that's very hard to do day after day the same thing. I can blame my ADD, I guess, but I've always been somebody that can do 2 or 3 or 4 things at once, but not very good at step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and every day doing the same thing. So that's been difficult. I still don't test like I should. I'm pretty good about testing in the morning, but as far as testing after meals or at particular times during the day, I'm not. And I'll forget to test sometimes in the mornings. I've had times when I forget, or we get busy doing something, forget to take insulin, and then that comes back. You know, you can see that directly the next time you test, and so then you know, try and. So I've got the stuff sitting out where I have to see it, and it's near the microwave, and it's under the dishes, so, you know, it's right there so you can see.
This grant that we have is really aimed to prevent type 2 diabetes, which is, it is preventable. Yeah. Not in every case, but, you know, in many cases, the majority.
Yeah, and I don't know how much of mine was because of family history. I certainly was predisposed to it. And Grant Stevenson told me for years, you know, you got to get your weight down. We can probably avoid this. Your sugar's high. It was in the 120s, and he says and then it went to 135, and right in that range. He says you can help yourself, and if you can't prevent the disease, you can prevent or delay a lot of the complications. So, gosh, the thing that I would talk about as far as prevention and getting ahead of this disease is get your weight down. Stop thinking that, well, because mom and dad ate brown beans and cornbread and fried potatoes at every meal, I have to eat that at least once a day or once every 3 days or something, you know. I have to give my mom a lot of credit. She understood, and she was always relatively trim. Had 5 kids, so parts of her in her tummy were nice and soft and round and were comforting, but there, you know, she was a pretty trim lady, and always made sure that there was a protein, a meat, a vegetable. She used to say, you know, you need a vegetable, a starch, a green, sometimes a salad. Usually we didn't have much dessert, and she wasn't much on, in fact, she was nothing on pop. You did not drink pop at dinner. You drank milk when you were growing up, or water when you were older. That was, I don't ever remember seeing a Coke. at a dinner table. So she was real good about that. But, you know, it's not just avoid the piece of cake and then you can eat whatever you want. If you don't have a piece of pie for dessert, then you can have mashed potatoes and fried potatoes and eat at a church social and have 5 different kinds of potatoes. You know, it's realizing that the food you eat directly impacts it. If you're exercising and thus getting your metabolism up, that if you're watching what you eat and how you go about it, that you can delay. Even if you're predestined to have it, you can certainly delay the complications. And it's no fun at all being 40 or 50 or even 60 years old and having severe complications from diabetes.
Absolutely. So we're looking at what we can do in the community, and particularly changing people's behaviors, increasing their knowledge, looking at local policies, and also environmental factors.
Now, environmental factors I know absolutely nothing about, so I'll leave that to somebody else to talk about. I think what they're doing here right now with the Diabetes Coalition, with the dinners that they're having, I think there was a lunch and a learning session that's going on. That's good. The articles in the paper have helped. I think just getting out with this new, it's not the food pyramid anymore, it's the food plate, getting that kind of thing out into the local newspaper or on, you know, PSA spots on the radio about how important it is to really watch what you eat, to make sure that your diet's balanced, to make sure that you're getting exercise. I mean, I'm an attorney. It's both a stressful and a time-consuming profession. You're in court or on the road a lot, but there's still choices you can make, and choices that are important to make.
Do you think that there are ways to work in the community with schools or workplace to change policies so that we're actually helping school children learn more about good nutrition and get more activity?
Our kids are now 31 and almost 31 and 32, so I've kind of lost track of what the elementary schools do as far as the food. I would expect that they are getting better, but I don't know that for a fact. I know that one thing that seems to have helped is there's more of a consciousness now. The only contact I've had with school lately, and this is probably the best way to say that, the only contact I've had with the schools lately is as a member of what they call their breakfast buddies at the middle school. And so we'll meet once every 2 or 3 weeks during the school year. We'll have breakfast with kids in the 7th and 8th grades. And I've noticed there's more awareness of more protein, less carbohydrates. Now, that may just be among some of us adults that were trying to eat Atkins, as they say, or watch the carbohydrates, but you'd see people turning down biscuits, turning down gravy, eating more scrambled eggs, or maybe 2 pieces of bacon instead of 1 and a biscuit, that kind of stuff. I really have to leave that to somebody else who knows what the dietitians out at the school are serving. I know sometimes it's a lot less expensive to do a big pot of mashed potatoes and the kids will eat it, than it is to you know, do greens or a salad or broccoli and cauliflower together. But it's kind of if they can work in the schools to do that, because we have a horrible problem here, and a lot of it's cultural. Like I say, it's I grew up, I'd never heard of a brown bean growing up. The only beans we ate, we had green beans occasionally, and then once every 6 months, my dad, who was a Navy veteran, cooked a big pot of white beans, the Navy beans. So it wasn't like that was a staple of my diet growing up. And I was 23 years old, 24 years old, I guess, before I ever ate pinto beans. And it was a big thing at the Sauda Memorial Hospital where I worked that summer. The lady said, Thursday is brown beans and cornbread day. And they had to show me how to eat them and put the onions in and crumble the cornbread. And it became something that I really, really liked. until, you know, my diabetes and the complications started more and more. And so there is a real resistance in this community to changing ways of eating. People, like I say, at senior citizens, you'll still hear when I go there, no, I can't have any pie today because I'm diabetic, but they haven't really told the other ladies to get a diabetic plate, so they ate their biscuit and they ate their mashed potatoes and they ate something else or had a double helping. So it's an awareness that it all turns to sugar or couldn't be used.
One last question,
Sure.
and it's really about the thinking about in the community. Do you see many overweight or obese children?
Oh yeah, just like there are kids in Lewis County now that I don't see how they fit in the desks. And it just seems to be more and more and more. You don't want to see kids going hungry. And I've seen that in the past where kids were so thin from not having food. That doesn't seem to be nearly the problem right now as the obese kids. Much more access to soda pop, Mountain Dew, to pick a brand if we can do that, I guess. But the kids that'll drink, you know, and you and I were raised on the 6.5 to 8 ounce soft drinks, okay? Now it's the 20 ounce screwable caps, and so you're getting 2.5 servings. And so instead of 150 or 60 calories, all of a sudden it's 350 calories every time you down a bottle. And there are kids that drink 3, 4, 5 of those a day. The fast food that's available, the potato chips, it's such a convenient way of eating that, yeah, and you don't see, I don't see or hear about the recess and the gym programs and the physical education that were there when you and I were growing up. Not to give away our age, but it's something that there seems to be more awareness now. You see more in the media about this, but I'm not sure we've turned the corner where the kid sizes are starting to come back down. And anecdotally, I read and I hear about you know, teenagers, people between 6 and 8 and 10. Being diagnosed not even with juvenile diabetes type 1 but type 2, and it's all related to lack of exercise and a really poor diet and the weight gain. So yeah, it's a big concern.
Do you think that there are ways to promote activity, physical activity for children, for teens, and for families in some different ways than we've done it in the past?
Well, that's a great question. I know that the First Lady is starting a program and less a program, more an awareness of getting out and moving and watching what, you know, you put before, if you're a mom or a dad taking care of kids, watching what you put before them to eat, giving them a good example of being physically fit instead of rewarding good behavior with, here, honey, have another piece of cake. Hey, honey, that was great. Let's go walk down by the river or take a hike, or let's go swing on the swings for a while, or you know, take a walk with mom or dad because, you know, we need to get out and walk. We do, and you'll be a big help to us. Make it feel like the kid is helping the parent, even though it's good for both of them. I don't know that it's any particular program as much as a mindset to, you know, leave the TV, leave the video game, and I just got my first iPhone, so leave the iPhone, put it down, and get out and walk or garden. You know, we're not as physically active as we were before. A lot of the jobs that required you to be physically active are gone, and a lot of people are working now sitting in front of a computer screen. And you know, that means you have to work doubly hard to get the exercise and the movement that you really need.
I think about, or I keep trying to think about, how can we change policies? How can we change local policies? What can we do locally to actually incentivize or encourage or support
Well, you can do things. Recently, there was a 5K walk through Vanceburg, and it was one of those double loop things where it was about 2.5 kilometers, and there was really a fantastic turnout for that. I think Amber's Angels, one of the local groups that's raising awareness. But encouraging, making sure that whenever we have a gathering of people coming in for a celebration, there's something that requires physical activity and makes that available and kind of plays that up more than the come on down and eat a funnel cake and see the fireworks. You know, get something, races for kids. You could have at your July Jubilee or at your Heritage Days Fest that's coming up, have a walk run, and then you could have races for kids, you know, up and down 2nd Street, that kind of stuff. Other policies, like I say, just continuing education that, and for the business people in the community, more and more education getting out there about, look, how much do you actually lose in productivity by having your people off sick because of having to go to the doctor, because of having to have a bypass surgery, you know, 15 years earlier than you should have had if you were, you know, even if it was destined to happen to you, much earlier. And how much money that costs us. Everybody's so aware of the cost of health care and how it's spiraling out of control. Well, here's a pretty good way to help reduce the cost of health care, at least in a one-person setting, and then that, if more and more people do that, then the cost starts coming down for that business. You know, if you've got businesses that encourage or that implement a no smoking ban, like the county judge has done in the courthouse. If you have business people that do the same and come up with some kind of incentive or help to help their employees that do smoke, whether it's you know, a set amount of money, kind of like we did, you know, honey, if you get an A, I'll give you $5 for every A on your report card. Something like that. People respond to that. People respond to being praised and receiving an incentive for better behavior. They really do. And you could have told me, like Courtney's done, you know, if you eat those potatoes, you're going to lose another toe, and I'd eat the potatoes because it gave me a satisfaction right then, and we're real good about ignoring the long-term consequences in exchange for an immediate satisfaction. So maybe, you know, businessmen and folks like that can give their people an incentive that'll be short-term and say, you go 1 week without smoking, there'll be an extra $10. There'll be the price of a carton of cigarettes in your paycheck. That type of thing, where they could say yes.
What, now you've raised two or three other questions.
Sure.
I just want to ask you that real quick, if I can, if you have the time.
Sure.
Smoking, we're actually working on looking at the problem of tobacco use in tobacco growing regions.
Okay.
Right, because there's different kinds of feelings about tobacco here.
Absolutely.
So I wonder if you could just say a little bit about that.
Oh, say a little bit about that. The only time I ever smoked was if there was a girl that smoked that I wanted to date. So I guess I was in the 7th to 8th grade and was taking a French class down at the University of Louisville during the summer, and there were 2 girls, the daughter of my dad's lawyer and one other girl, who smoked, and I thought that'd be really cool. So I bought a pack of Cools or Salem's, one of the menthols, and I got a headache, but I didn't get that. There's something that a smoke that when somebody becomes a smoker, there's got to be something that gives them either a pleasurable feeling or something, or they never do it. So, you know, I never got that, so I never started smoking regularly. And I would smoke, I think Courtney and I went through our Cher Beatty phase of the clove cigarettes for you know, a couple of weeks or something like that, maybe Courtney longer than me. And I used to smoke a cigar once a year in the office and drive my secretary Beverly nuts. So I personally, I don't understand what it was that got the person addicted. Now, I've read enough, I know enough since then about how addictive it is. So whatever that mechanism was that got the person to smoke, it's powerful and it's hard to beat. You know, my addiction would be food, would be the potatoes, would be the breads and stuff like that, leading back into taking somebody who's disposed to have diabetes and just running headlong into it and embracing it until I finally got what I was chasing. But in a tobacco growing county like Lewis, where even now people still grow tobacco, but not like they used to before the price supports went out, and so that's both a good and a bad thing. There are people that will tell you, oh gosh, Dad smoked all his years, I've smoked 60 years, I didn't get cancer, you know, why are you trying to bug me? And I understand that belief. I used to not wear seat belts because my dad was an erector, would have been killed if he'd had a seat belt on. But then you read the statistics and you see that you know, when you actually look at it over a long period of time, a large period of cases, you're much better off not smoking, you're much safer to wear seat belts, and so it becomes, do I really think I'm an exception to the rule? Do I really think the laws of physics don't apply to me? And so that's when you start buckling up, that's when you work on stopping smoking or not starting. As far as things in a tobacco growing community, there are a lot of people, even tobacco farmers, say, yeah, we'll grow it, but God, I don't use it. I'm not going to use it. That stuff causes cancer. So, you know, but you also got to eat. And it's that age-old problem between the long term and the short term. It's absolutely right that in long term things will happen, but we don't die, we don't eat, we don't live day to day in the long term, we live in the short term. And that's why for years, you know, I'd eat those potatoes, I'd eat those rolls, I'd have another helping of some starch. That's why in the short term people continue to smoke and say, I'll give that up tomorrow. But, you know, if you really look at it, it will, you know, the facts are just there. You will do harm to yourself.
Okay, let me, you work in the courthouse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you have an elevator?
Yeah, do now. Well, actually, it took a long time to get an elevator into the old courthouse before we had the new Justice Center. Yeah.
And so, and you have stairs.
Oh, yes.
As a policy in the courthouse, do you encourage people to take the stairs rather than the elevator?
Oh, my, no. You were nice and didn't ask personally, and I have done it. When I think about it, sometimes I do. And in the old courthouse where you had to, then you became good at doing the go up the front steps, catch your breath as you walk down the second story, and then walk up the third. If you were in a hurry, you'd walk up both flights at once, and then you'd be and gasping. And that would be a good thing. It would be, and I'm sure that the judges and the clerks would be fine. In fact, I probably should ask them if we can put a sign next to the elevator. You know, wouldn't you really rather take the stairs? You know,
or take the stairs for your health.
Yeah, do your heart a favor. Use the stairs. Yeah, and that would particularly work, and it would still have a benefit. Put that sign on the third floor. You know, because I will find myself taking the stairs down rather than wait for an elevator. But it's very rare that I walk up, you know, unless I'm in a real hurry. You know.
I don't know if that saves any money on the electric bill if people take this. Probably not significant.
No, it wouldn't be significant, but again, it would be a thing
it's creating patterns of behavior, right? Changing what has been our norm to do to some new norm.
I would used to get in the car to drive to the post office or to drive down to Citizens Deposit, and I don't do that anymore. I mean, I haven't done that for 10 or 15 years. You know, if you've got a errand to run around town. You just walk out the door and you go run it, and you know, you go to the post office and then over to Farm Bureau to pay your insurance, then back to the bank and then back, and so you make a circuit. But as far as the walking up the courthouse steps, that's still hard to do. Gives me something to work on.
Something to think
Sharon,
about.
yes it does. Yes it does.
And the other thing that when you were talking I was thinking about is that so often we do these events where we do encourage activities. So we have a hike or we have some kids activities. But how do we get from an event to an everyday behavior?
Same thing. Same way you do it in church or in the drugstore or the courthouse or in your marriage. You ask about it the next day. You keep talking about it. You hold the person accountable. You ask the questions. My wife is really good about that. You know, good spouses are. They're good at holding you accountable. And so it's good about, well, gosh, that's great that you walked 5 kilometers yesterday. You realize it's less than the 3 miles you walk when you walk in the morning. Are you going to get up in the morning? You know, are you going to walk today? I'm so proud of you. You know, again, combining the praise with the questioning and the holding you accountable. Something as simple as at the end of the walk, you know, they give out the trophies, encouraging everybody not to make this a one-time a week or a one-time a month or a one-time a year thing. You know, stay active, keep walking, run your errands by running your errands instead of taking the car, that type of stuff. Yeah.
Excellent. You've provided lots of good stuff. I think I have covered about everything. Is there anything you'd like to add before we conclude?
Oh, just like everybody else, I wish I'd taken this more seriously earlier. You know, that's the one regret that I have. And I try not to have too many regrets, but I think that looking down the road, we just had our first grandchild born in July, and it was a grandson. And then you sit here at age 59, knowing your dad died at 60 and your father-in-law at 63. Now your mom and your grandmother on that side lived to old age, as did on Daddy's side, except for his mom. And then you think, you know, am I going to be here when Weston starts playing kindergarten, going to kindergarten, or playing Little League, or graduating from high school? Will I see him get married? And that's when you start to sit there and think, oh, I wish I had, I wish I had. Even when Grant wrote me in 1999, and it still took me 6 or 7 years to take this disease seriously. I'm taking it seriously now.